Greetings everyone, Black Witch Dirah here, Luciferian Witch of the Left-Hand Path, as well as an occult educator. Today I have my friend Robert here with us, and we are going to be talking about the Qliphoth and the Tree of Life. So we decided to do a video on this because we've come up with an idea to kind of introduce a project which helps you initiate into these paths. We feel like there's a bit of a gap here for this because in my experience, it feels like what's currently out there is very much not catered to the individual, very set in stone, and also isn't very accessible either. So we've kind of been brainstorming on what we can do about this. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Qliphoth, and Robert's going to talk about the Tree of Life. But before we get into that, I'm going to give Robert an opportunity to introduce himself properly. So over to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Robert. I'm an eclectic practitioner of the magical arts, which means I've been on many mystical paths and I have seen the interwoven links between them all, which when it comes to the Tree of Life, it allows me to teach a wide variety of people without excluding anyone. It turns a previously closed system into one that is full of potential and allows everyone to walk it. So yeah, it doesn't matter what pantheon you work with, what system you're already a part of, everyone's welcome.
Okay, so what is the Qliphoth? The Qliphoth is also known as the Tree of Death or the Tree of Knowledge, which is a reference to the Garden of Eden when Eve bit the apple and she gained knowledge from the Tree of Knowledge. So the Qliphoth is seen to be the husks, the shells of God's aborted creation. So it's essentially the shadow of the Tree of Life, or the debris. It's said to be the influx of the divine force that the Sephiroth couldn't hold. But put into much more basic terms, it's essentially just a really intense path of shadow work, of the unconscious. It's essentially a manifestation of the personal shadow, of awakening inner powers and transmuting darkness, transmuting the shadow. And this is all to create what is known as the Black Diamond. So you're going through all of these experiences on the Qliphoth to fully transmute that darkness. Now, the Qliphoth is presented as, I feel like, quite a dark and scary thing, and it is something that, you know, does need to be taken seriously. It's not, you know, to be like messed around with or underestimated, but it also doesn't need to be, I feel like, as intimidating as it's made out to be. Now, you can be within one of these shells, husks, spheres, without consciously knowing it, and the Qliphoth can be a bit of like an unconscious process as well. So in terms of what like the Qliphoth actually is, like, some people say there are actual like astral realms that you can travel to, and others say they are just metaphorical. I believe that they are both. So where does it start? It starts with Lilith. The equivalent is Malkuth on the Tree of Life. So this is the womb of Lilith and the opening to the other side, and, you know, consists of the primal self, feminine forces, sex magic, kundalini. If you compare it to the chakra system, it's the root. Now, what people sometimes get confused with about the Qliphoth is the names. So, for example, Lilith, the Qlipha of Lilith is not ruled by Lilith. It's ruled by Nehemoth or Nahama, or there's various names for her, right? So essentially, this is the opening. Its planetary correspondence is the Earth. So then we move up to Gamaliel or Gamaliel, various different pronunciations for these terms. And this is ruled by Lilith, and it's referred to as the Qlipho of the obscene ones. So here we have sexual alchemy, lunar magic. So it corresponds to the moon, right? So there's a lot about witchcraft and vampirism, pleasure and pain, and Samael, from some sources, is said to reside here as well. Being the counterpart to Lilith. And then we move on to Samael, which translates to the poison of God. And in this sphere, it's the alchemical poison, drinking the alchemical poison in order to dissolve intellect so that we can break down the illusions of intellect, reason-based thinking. And it's referred to as wisdom from insanity. So from this insanity and the insanity that's created by these illusions, once that is broken down, we then find wisdom. And this can be really terrifying. It can feel like a spiritual crisis. I know for me, it was very much this moment of like, am I just one of those magicians that messed about and lost their mind? I really felt like there was just so much I was questioning about myself, about my belief system, and it was pretty terrifying. But what was on the other side of it was this wisdom gained from the insanity, right? And it's the removal of the chains of that, and the chains of the ego. Okay. And then we've got Arabzarak, ruled by Baal or Baal, and this is Venus. And here we so like through the Qliphoth, I spoke about accessing certain powers within us, and here it's like very much focused on Baal being the god of war, fertility, and sex coming into that as well. There's a lot about astral warfare and further work in the astral as well. And there's more about going deeper into sex magic here. And this is the last outpost before we reach the Black Sun, and this is as far as I'm going to go today, because for this initiatory process, I don't want to be too overwhelming with what's ahead. And at the end of the day, guys, you can find out this information for yourself. I'm not telling you anything new here, which is why I didn't want to get too into the terminology of things and too into tradition and technicalities and what's what, because I'm not telling you anything new. There's free online resources that can give you a lot of information, but ultimately, like, I feel like these systems where you are initiating through spheres, there's an illusion of completion. And yes, you do complete this, you do initiate through it, but it's not like that doesn't mean that you're never going to have to face your shadow again. Once you've initiated up to the top sphere and you complete that, you see the void, the black void, and that's where the black diamond is. And it's like you reach this void, and it's almost like that there's not an end, essentially. So yes, the Qliphoth can be completed, but it's like the work is never done at the end of the day. I feel like as long as we're alive, we haven't finished our shadow work. So, which is why I despise the term, oh, I've completed my shadow work. No, the fuck you haven't. I don't think that's a thing, personally. I just don't think that's a thing. So I wanted to go a little bit more into my experience of working through the Qliphoth and the experiences that brought up. Like I said, it sent me into quite the spiritual crisis. It honestly felt like, it felt a bit like, I was concerned I was having a mental health crisis. I was concerned that like I needed like urgent help, because what I felt like my reality was like crumbling around me, and I was like, oh my God, I've got psychosis. And then I was like, I can't have psychosis, because then I wouldn't think I've got psychosis. And it was really, really crazy. And I remember at the time making a post on Instagram about the difference between the sort of insanity that we can experience working through this stuff and how that compares to, you know, when you've actually got a mental health condition, right? It's a fine line, but it's a fine line that needs to be, you know, really acknowledged. And you know, this path brings forth a lot. I mean, you know, you're facing your shadow at the end of the day, and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. And what that brings forth is a lot of fear, a lot of illusions that need to be worked through. So in a sense, it's like, I remember I read this book at the time. It wasn't an occult book, it was a psychology book, and it was called Trials of the Visionary Mind. And it was basically comparing what spiritual crisis was in comparison to legitimate diagnosed mental health disorders. And it really helped me at the time. Yeah, you know, my experience was with the Qliphoth. It was like I only started looking into it after I had actually completed some of it. I didn't even like, it was like I was trying to make a conscious decision to work, and I'm still glad that, you know, I made that conscious decision, because the knowledge has certainly helped me, and I don't think I would have been able to do the work that I've done, especially in Samael, without knowledge of what was going on. Like, that was important. So, but yeah, I didn't even realize that I was further along than I thought. And when I realized, I was like, oh shit, like, this is what I was saying. You can kind of initiate onto this without knowing. And I feel like I initiated onto it pretty much as soon as I started, you know, working with certain gods, goddesses, entities. It already plunged me into those realms. What I also found really confusing at the time as well was I took a very perfectionistic approach to this, where, you know, my brain processes things like, when things are laid out in tasks, and you do this, you do that, and then you do that. And what Samael really helped me to do was, like I said, break down that illusion of intellect, of logical thought, of the ego. And once I started listening to that sense instead of what my mind was saying, the process became a lot easier. So I feel like the way that learning content around this subject is laid out, it's very much like, so it's almost laid out like a tick list, just from what I've seen. It's like, okay, so you work on that skill, you do this ritual, you do that, you do that, you do that. And that was really confusing for me, because it took away the individualistic approach, which is what leads you through this. It's an individualistic experience. There are common themes for each part that you work through, but no one's experience of it looks the same. So it's difficult to it's difficult to limit someone's experience down to a set of tasks to complete. Like, that's not how the Qliphoth works. We all hold different stories, different thought forms, within our shadow, and therefore our paths through this are going to be different. I would say that over the last year is probably where I've made the fastest progress through the Qliphoth, and that I do believe that is because of increased awareness around certain things. And it's certainly not been an easy journey, but I never expect. I always say I don't want the easy journey. Any system like this requires the individual to have courage, to have stamina, to have discipline in order to work through this, which is why I really wanted to bring something into the community that wasn't based on kind of, let's say, lower magic, right? And where someone wants to learn how to do XYZ spells, right? And I'm not saying that like that's inherently a bad thing, but what that tends to do is limit that person to the lower magics rather than a path to the person they can become and how they can evolve through this. So the higher magics, the great work. And essentially the magic of this path are the physical changes that take place in your external life, but also internally. That is the magic of it. That is the outcome of it. And that is the success of it. So your experiences on this path are what equal your success. So I'm going to leave that there and now pass over to Robert, who's going to talk now about the Tree of Life.
Thank you. So it would be very easy to assume that the Tree of Life is the polar opposite to the Tree of Death, but it's not. If I present it in such a way of the common understanding of reincarnation, so when we die in this world, in our physical bodies, we ascend into spirit. When we reincarnate, we come from spirit back into matter. And when we reincarnate, if you believe in reincarnation, that is, you will find yourself with memories, latent experiences from former lives that we can't quite put our fingers on. And the way this relates to the magical path is you might be an amazing psychic, you might be an amazing magician, but you might not know why. Or you might be attracted to certain forms of magic and certain mystical paths, but you don't know why. And the way I would sum up the Tree of Life is essentially returning back to spirit. It's your journey in returning back to spirit, but not in a physical death, but whilst you're still in this physical plane. So you're merging the spiritual realm with yourself. And as Dirah said in regards to doing quote unquote low magic, the Tree of Life essentially stops you dancing in the dark and picking up a thing here, picking up a thing there. It's the fabric that weaves your entire life's purpose together. And although, yes, you will learn magical things, yes, you'll work with deities, yes, you'll work with spirits. And a lot of the things that are in the Tree of Death are also in the Tree of Life. That is true. It's more than that. Rather than, say, working with a deity in a Sephiroth and you worshipping the said deity, their deity is basically a guide in that Sephiroth. They're not there to be adorned. They're not there to be worshipped. Yes, I can understand if a deity shows up, it's quite a profound experience because we're often told that these deities don't exist. They're not real, but they most definitely are. But in that theater, They are there to help you chisel away all the parts of yourself that are illusion, essentially. So if you imagine you're a block of marble that hasn't been touched. If a light is shining on that block of marble is going to cast a big shadow. But by going through each Sephiroth, you chisel that marble into your true self. And you'll realize just how big your shadow is. And by seeing how big your shadow is, you can see what you actually need to explore. Going back to what I previously said about dancing in the dark, you could stay stuck there forever. And what I mean by that is dancing in your own shadow and dealing with things that you don't actually need to deal with. And where the individualistic approach shines, excuse the pun, is that it doesn't count on someone else shining a light on you and telling you where your shadow is. It allows you to see exactly where your shadow is and exactly what you need to deal with. We're on this earth for a finite amount of time. And I think, from my perspective, that evolving spiritually is of utmost importance, because there's two like absolutes in this life. You were born and you're going to die. And for me, ascending the tree of life it's a way of, as I previously mentioned, discovering who you truly are while you're here and not wasting that time. Because you could go down many paths and end up right back at the start. By entering on the tree of life, yes, it is a structure. Yes, you go through one part to another part. But as Dirah said, it is extremely personal. No one's experiences are the same. It works on your divine blueprint. So who you were when you reincarnated into this life, or when you incarnated for the first time, for those that are, you will discover parts of yourself that you might have only thought were true from like an intuitive flash, so to speak. But you'll also find out the parts that aren't true about yourself. So essentially what it does is the light of Qliphoth, which is the topmost Sephiroth, shines down on you so you can see where that light shines back up. And by chiseling away all the marble, you see just how big that light is and just how well connected you are. Just how intrinsically connected you are to the divine light of spirit, because it does shine in us. As the axiom goes, as above, so below, so within, so without. So to sum it all up, yes, you work with deities across many pantheons, as I previously mentioned. Traditionally, you work with archangels, but what the archangels actually represent are the most purified form of spirit of that element. Elementally, you go from earth to water, water to air, and so on and so forth. And basically what this will do is purify all of those parts of your life. So in earth, you can imagine building a foundation. And I think Dirah briefly touched on it, is that the most important thing on this path is building a sturdy foundation. Because if a foundation isn't good, your house is going to fall down. So not only does the tree of life give you a sturdy foundation that cannot fall, it gives you a starting off point, which you can always come back to with that foundation. So what Malkuth represents is that sturdy foundation. And the way I can see it being beneficial to people, especially if they have an eclectic practice, like I did, is that it allows you to expand with direction rather than jumping from here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, don't, if you are of pagan beliefs, please don't be put off by like archangels and think that they are connected to Christianity. They're not. If you look in all major religions and pagan religions, there is always a example of something called a shining one, which the word angelos actually means messenger. So it means messenger of the divine. In the North pantheon, some of them believe the Valkyrie to be the angelos. And they have different names depending on what tradition you're in. Anyway, that is delving quite a lot into the finer details, but I will move on to how this affected me. So, on my experiences with the Tree of Life. So essentially, I was born with gifts. I didn't really know what they were for. And modern spiritualism, or the spiritualist movement, will teach you a very, very basic way of dealing with it. And it puts forward that that is the only way of dealing with it. And anything outside of that isn't correct. And by moving onto the Tree of Life, it literally lit up my world. And it showed me that all of my abilities, all of the experiences I was having, as Dirah said, you think you're going crazy sometimes, they were actually legit. Every single experience I had was completely legitimate, and the educational systems were essentially not prepared to deal with the level of progression that I needed, or I was doing essentially. The reason why I say this is because I know there are many, many people lost on their paths who get told that this is all that's out there. And I'm here today to tell you there is far more out there than you will ever know. What is the reason for us putting this program out there is to show you what's out there. So without extensive experience, I think I can speak for Dirah here when I say that we want to give that back. We want to shine a light and essentially bear a torch, showing people what they can do, where they can go, and just how spiritually connected they are. Also, just to touch on to other aspects of the Tree of Life and what you'll be doing, there is a large focus on planetary magic as well. So you'll be working, so Malkuth represents Earth, Yasod represents the Moon, Hod represents Mercury, and Netzach represents Venus. And then you move into Tipra, which is the Sun. And there is more after that, but as Dirah said, I don't want to overload you with information. And essentially within those Sephiroths, you will say like Earth magic would lead to things such as finances, bare bones manifestation, protection magic, and so on and so forth. And what's really beautiful about this system is that every Sephiroth you go into, that is expanded upon. So what you might learn in Earth is further expanded upon in the Moon, lunar influences, and so on in Mercury, and so on in Netzach and Tiferet as well. And that continues up the Tree of Life. So it's not that you will learn something in Malkuth and then it'll be done with. It'll be an ever-growing wonder, essentially. As the tree grows from the root up, so will your knowledge from Malkuth up. I hope that even if you just watch this video, that what I said today gives you some insight, and it gives you some hope that one, you're not crazy and this stuff is real, and two, that it sparks a fire in your heart and in your mind, and it starts you on your path towards the divine, whichever path you choose, whether that's the tree of life or the tree of death. And perhaps I'm mistaken to use the word "or" there, because I do believe they are intrinsically linked. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening to me, and yeah, I hope that we'll be seeing each other soon in a class.
So to sum up, I think it's important to leave on the note of, as Robert mentioned, I don't know if this is a real word, but a collectiveness of it. It's not about angels and demons. Both paths do include, or you will come across, other deities. So it's not about what's angelic and what's demonic, as you know, it's presented as such because obviously the spheres are named as such, but it's so much that there's so much more to it than that, which is what we're trying to express here. So, regardless of tradition and path you may be on, it's still something that can be applied and something you can benefit from massively. So to conclude this video, this is something that we are going to be releasing, and we're both really excited about this project. So until then, make sure you stay in the loop, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Robert's channel, which will be linked in the description, as well as our socials, so you're keeping up to date with everything that we've got going on in relation to this. Hello everyone, this is Editing Dirah here. Just to quickly mention, we do have a mailing list, so if you want to stay up to date with our upcoming plans for this program, make sure you are subscribed to that. I am very excited for this. I don't think I've been as excited for a project in so long. So I'm going to leave this video here today. I hope that it was helpful and informative for you all. And any questions, leave in the comments. My email is also always in the description, so you know how to reach me. So thank you, Robert, for joining us today, and I will see you guys in my next video.